course, informed everyone that we will be recording, which we have just started now. So anyone, both participants and the general public, I think, can have a reference to this this closing webinar after the fact if they're unable to join. But today's session is to give basically a wrap up to our very productive online discussion forum, and to discuss a little bit about both the views that were raised, just to give some examples and some key points. Of course, this is not a comprehensive summary. We still have to work a bit more on that, but also to talk a little bit about the next steps, both for this forum and for the remainder of the intersessional work. So before I go ahead and pass the floor over to our Substa chair and the co-facilitators, and before I forget, I wanted to, of course, sincerely thank Mary May and Janos as co-facilitators of this work for their leadership. Give our sincere thanks also to Hesikio, the Substa chair, for his overall leadership and guidance on this work, and also to my colleagues on the Marine and Islands team, Jackie Grecken, who you've seen many emails from, my colleagues Johanny and Marketa, and also our colleague Nancy, who helped us to set all these technical specifications up. Our colleague Stefan also, who is I don't think on with us, but nonetheless helped us to set up this forum. So we greatly appreciate their collaboration. So for today's session, we are going to have first some opening remarks for this closing webinar. And for that, I will pass over to our Substa chair, Hesikio. Please, Hesikio, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Joe, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. We'll now reach the closing of the online discussion forum on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity in preparation for the 15 meetings of the Conference of the Parties. I wish to thank you all for your robust engagement in this discussion, which was held in a very new format for many of us. Despite our physical distance from each other, we indeed held a full discussion with 160 posts across all 5 threads. We were pleased to see not only your strong engagement, but also the constructive nature of your inputs, which provide not only clear views, but rationales for approaches to the COP15 decision on this issue. The discussion raised views on useful elements to be considered for incorporation into the COP15 decision, but also key areas on differing views that the COP will need to address on these issues. These discussions, in particular, those under thread number 3, will also be extremely useful for delegates in the 4th meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, beginning next week in Nairobi. The Secretariat will be working hard to produce the report of this meeting in order to make it available for the meeting next week as a useful reference document for the deliberations. In addition, the Secretariat will be convening an information webinar on Monday, next Monday, which will be open to any who wish to join, to provide a briefing on the discussions under this forum closing today. This will be recorded and posted online for those who cannot view it live. This will be a very good opportunity just before the beginning of the Open-Ended Working Group for deliberations. Again, I offer you my sincere thanks for helping us to fulfill the mandate of Substat Recommendation 24-9 by advancing discussions on these key issues when we were unable to do so at the physical meeting of Substat. Your valuable input will help to provide a strong basis for discussions by the COP and a strong COP decision on marine issues. Thank you very much, and back to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Ezekiel. Indeed, we are, I think, very pleased with the nature of the discussions, the types of input that we received. We were very pleased to see that, of course, we were talking about the COP decision and talking about the text, but we weren't focusing on crafting the text. We were talking about views and rationale. So that was very, very constructive and will be very useful not only for COP, of course, but also for Nairobi, the Nairobi meeting next week. So now I will pass over to our co-facilitators. Janos, as unfortunately has another commitment, but he'll be joining a little bit later. So now it will be Mary May's turn to take the leadership. And I pass over to Mary May, and Mary May, I'll share the slides from my side, and you can give me a signal when you wish me to change.
Thank you, Joe. So good afternoon, good morning, good time of the day to all colleagues, and thank you for joining us for the closing webinar. So like Joe mentioned, I guess today I will return the favor for Janos, who held the fort last time. So we are just going to walk through some of the summary that we have prepared together with the team at the Secretariat. Slide. Okay, so just to recap a little bit, so the main objective of our online discussion was for us to address the main recommendations from CBD Substa decision recommendation 24.9. As you all know, we had those issues of lack of time, and so therefore we wanted to ensure that we would give parties the chance intersessionally to advance our discussions on some of the substantive issues that that are found in the annexes that we were not able to have enough time to discuss at the Geneva meetings. Slide. Okay, so for that reason, we had the forum and we wanted to receive those expressed in views and inputs on the main recommendations or elements that parties wanted to offer, and that if we had done it in a face-to-face setting, that would allow them to give inputs towards the CBD COP15 decision and also towards the Global Biodiversity Framework, which, as we know, several parties had indicated that they had seen, the strong correlation with some of the issues being brought up in the CRP on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. Slide. So just a little bit of the statistics around the participation that we had. So for the 2 days last week and the 2 days this week, we had a total of 55 participants, as per the list you've seen there, from 36 countries. Whilst we see that we had participation from all the regions, we did have some regions that had very few or at least just one participant, but everyone was covered. And we also had participation from 19 organizations. And as you would have seen from the post, the post did come well from all of the representation that we had. Okay, so now focusing a little bit on the threads, and you will see from the slide there that we've put the number of posts that were received from each of the threads, with the highest number coming from thread 3 around the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Well, no surprise there, because I guess this was one of the main things that I know parties are all thinking of, especially in the lead up to the Nairobi meeting, which will be happening next week. So trying to make those, those linkages of where are the entry points, what are the things that we think can carry over into the Nairobi discussions. Okay. So now in the next couple of slides, so the Secretariat have tried to compile, as you know, we've just closed the forum yesterday, so this is a very, very early sort of compilation of some of the points and views that had been raised in each of the threads. So they're not consensus based in any way, and we've just tried to capture the main issues that have come through. So keep that in mind when I'm going to the following slides. So the posts themselves, they varied significantly in the style, in the amount of details. Some addressed issues at quite a general level, and whilst others were more sort of specific in their posts. The following are some of the general points that were raised. So there were some posts or discussions around focusing on what a COP decision can help achieve. And this considered things for implementation, which we all looking towards, ensuring that there is a balance at all levels for implementation to happen, local, national, regional, and also at a global scale, and also how to seek alignments and synergies with other intergovernmental agreements and processes. I think that there's been a lot of discussions around this, especially in the marine and coastal biodiversity space, where there's a lot of other ongoing processes that are happening. So therefore, in looking how these things would link together. COP decisions to help ensure that and strengthen implementation at national level. Again, making sure that implementation remains at the heart of all of the COP decisions. Importance of instilling a human rights-based approach, looking at avoiding marginalization and having an inclusive approach whereby we include traditional users and we look at fair and equitable sharing of benefits, so making sure that we're addressing the different objectives of the convention and also ensuring that these are translated down to the level of the use of ocean resources as well. There were also some posts around facilitation to improve coordination and understanding between those engaged in conservation and the use of marine resources. And then also, we're speaking of inclusivity, then also empowering the use of women's knowledge and inputs to marine and coastal and sustainable use. Slide. So now digging into some of the main points that we found from the threads. So for thread 1, for cooperation, collaboration, and linkages with competent organizations and relevant initiatives. So one of the key points that came out, or that we saw came out, was the importance of grounding decision-making in sound science. So having, those evidence-based decision-making. Again, coming back to this point of alignment with other processes, and here some specific example around the UN Decade on Ocean Science, which is now ongoing, and also the UN Decade on Restoration, and see how to make, again, those alignments and trying to ensure that there is synergy across the different processes. Recognizing the role of regional and competent organization. So there is a lot of discussions to ensure that the inclusivity also extends to, non-governmental bodies, and the role also that they can bring to the implementation and monitoring and reporting on progress. Because a lot of times this is where the capacity lies, and this is where some of the discussions around regional scale collaborations, partnerships, example through the SOI Global Dialogue and all of that. So again, these were raised and recognized, and also recognize that we need to strengthen and maintain as well as introduce new ones. Need to improve coordination among increasing number of international legal instruments. So again, there's a lot happening in that ocean space. So I think parties really wanted to reiterate the need for having coordination and moving away from sort of the fragmentation that kind of exists in that space. Also, one of the points there was on the need to focus on precautionary approach and an ecosystem approach, building on accepted and understanding of previous agreements and practices. So again, not starting from scratch, but building on things that parties are already quite comfortable with, and that also in having that level of understanding, then it would make implementation easier. Next. Okay, so for thread 2, which was on marine and coastal biodiversity in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and implications for programs of work. So again, here it was quite extensive, the comments that we've received. Some parties raised this at the opening webinar and also in the posts around, how good the discussions and the in the ABMT's workshop that happened, in the marine thematic workshop, that happened back in 2019, and how we could use some of this to provide the full view of the full plethora of views that actually would help feed into the post-2020 framework and how it should look like and what it should mean in terms of implementation. Again, stressing on the need for the post-2020 GBF to seek alignment with the objectives and mandates of different agreements and conventions, and here a few are listed on how best we can make the link, and just moving away from CBD on its own in a silo. There were quite a bit of posts around the review of the program of work on marine and coastal biodiversity and island biodiversity in the context of the post-2020 framework. And this is really sort of parties saying that this could be the entry point. So looking on the views of governments and relevant stakeholders, how consideration should be given on whether to be part of a broader review, and identify how CBD will assist in the implementation of the post-2020 framework, specifically on marine and coastal biodiversity issues, giving special consideration for SIDS. That also came out. Focus on helping to address knowledge gaps, so thematic knowledge gaps as well as the geographic representation. Focusing on building capacity for decision making under imperfect knowledge. Cannot see the last 2 points. And I know there was a point here on emerging issues, so focusing a bit on those emerging issues. Next slide. Okay, so thread number 3, implementing the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework in marine and coastal areas. So here again, focus on the goals and targets for marine and coastal biodiversity. And having that explicit where relevant in the framework so that it comes out abundantly, that marine issues are important. And there were some differing views about whether to refer to a numeric figure of the post-2020 targets. So for instance, here we're talking about the 30% protected area coverage, and also issues under negotiation in post-2020 process. So there were some differing posts, differing views on this. Refer to important principles, elements for effectiveness of protected area network. So what actually, should actually be considered as part of the measure for effectiveness, whether we're going to look at ecological representativity, protection of areas with high biodiversity, EBSAs, however, with an emphasis again, like I mentioned, on effective management of protected areas. There were some posts around capturing the key threats, pressures, and issues, but avoiding making a Christmas tree. So having a necessity to have good coverage, however, not to make the list too extensive that it doesn't come out as being a Christmas tree. So having more of a strategic review and analysis as per the process for identifying emerging issues. And then also there were some posts around, again, the necessity to include IPLCs and rights holders, various economic sectors, including global sectoral institutions, and also having, those networks and implementation contexts, recalling, of course, the differences in responsibilities. Next. Okay, so thread 4 was on plastics, marine spatial planning, and deep sea mining. And here on the post that we received, there were references made to, you know, productive, extractive, and economic sectors, and the role that they would have to play in this space, or that they can and do play, or the existing issues that are happening in that space. Reference to transfer of relevant technology, capacity building, and partnership development. Again, here in some of the other processes that are happening, how we come back to the CBD and also ensure that there is capacity across the board for implementation. Reference to cumulative impacts of various activities and threats. Differing views on how to refer to risks and impacts of deep seabed mining. Also, there were references made to the support for the development of a new treaty on plastic pollution. And then we also had references to various stakeholders in context of marine spatial planning, and the role of IPLCs, you know, international human rights, including the women and the youths. And so making sure that when we're looking at the issues around plastic, marine spatial planning, and deep sea mining, that there is inclusivity, there is capacity building, and also to understand the different views that exist in that sector. So because this was quite a bit of a mix, so I think this one would take some thinking about how best to integrate that in the report. Next one. Thread 5 on mainstreaming, capacity building, partnerships, and synergies. So here the posts were around the needs for having synthesis of information on the implementation of OECMs, including their effectiveness, need to strengthen synergies with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in particular with regards to nature-based solutions. You know, some of the new terms that are being introduced under the GBF, MPAs, and OECMs as critical tools to tackle both climate change and biodiversity through protecting and restoring ocean ecosystems. So bridging that nexus. Of course, there were and there still are differing views about whether we should use the term nature-based solutions, which, as we know, has not received like unanimous acceptance at this point in time. Need further guidance on OECMs, need for a clear reference to IPLCs, women and youth. References were also made to deliberations and implementation of the new instrument for marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, the BBNJ Treaty. So there were, again here, some differing views as to whether, you know, it's okay for us to include texts on synergies with the implementation of the treaty whilst it's still under negotiation. So we have, you know, differing views on this. And then also reference to collaborations with the UN Division on Ocean Affairs. So these were some of the points captured. So I don't know if we want to stop here for some questions or views, Joe, or you want me to continue?
It's as you wish, Madam Facilitator. The next part of the discussion is more focused on the next steps. I think at this point we may not wish to, you know, bring in any new points, but if things that people may wish to clarify, maybe we can do some. But it's we're in your hands.
Okay, so I guess we can open a little bit the floor now just for some feedback. Feedback on the process, on the posts themselves, and also maybe on the points that we have captured. So that would be welcome for us in trying to finalize the report. So over to you. The floor is open. Am I going to see raised hand in this?
We do have the raise hand capacity, but since we have a small group, I think maybe people can, if they know how to raise the hand, they can do that under reactions. But if not, they can simply just turn on their camera and let us know they want to speak.
Okay. So anyone with any views or any inputs?
So we have a hand from our colleague Sophie from Belgium.
Go ahead, Sophie.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Because I've been struggling with my microphone.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, okay, you can hear me. That's excellent. Thank you very much for this comprehensive overview. Thank you to the Secretariat as well, who put in a lot of work moderating the online discussion and helping you prepare this, so that it has been very valuable information. Maybe just, I'm not going to repeat every comment that I made, but maybe overall, just to point out that from a Belgian perspective, it's important, or the links that were made to the Global Biodiversity Framework are quite important, in a sense that we do realize that there will be eyes on what we're doing here, what we have been doing here, when the open-ended working group will start, or at least we hope that there will be eyes on the result of what we're doing here. And so even if only from that perspective, we feel that that is worth to give a message as marine experts, give a specifically marine focused spotlight on what marine expert thinks should be part of the Global Biodiversity Framework. We realize that in the end, I mean, unless I'm completely mistaken, but the Global Biodiversity Framework and this decision will be at the COP adopted at the same time, or at least more or less at the same time. So we feel like putting it here in an end result of this online seminar or workshop, or even having it as a part of the recommendations or input given to the COP, does not preempt the discussion, because it's not like we are adopting this now and the Global Biodiversity Framework will only be adopted months later. They will be adopted simultaneously or at the same COP in any case. And in that case, we can still tweak and adapt accordingly if the Global Biodiversity Framework ends up deciding on slightly different wordings or even the targets that are being paraphrased or referred to in what we've been saying. So we do feel like we have that liberty, and that it's important enough to send a message that we could take that liberty now, knowing that in the end it will be adopted in one go, let's say. That would be my first intervention. My second intervention is that there has been some discussion regarding areas beyond national jurisdiction, and specifically also the process leading to a new instrument for biodiversity under outside national jurisdiction. And we feel again like it will be extremely important for CBD to work hand in hand with BBNJ when it will be set up. And we feel again like the references are not as such to be preempting the outcome. The references are only to already say that CBD is ready to work with BBNJ. And in that sense, we feel like we have enough caveats as to not preempt the content, neither of the BBNJ or, like I said before, the post-2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. And I think these are sort of very relevant points, especially on the first one, recognizing, of course, that both the process from the open-ended working group and this intersessional process and the outcomes that would both go towards COP and be adopted at the same time. So there will be, the potential for us to make those alignments. And I think it would also be up to us, the parties, to ensure that what we've been contributing here, it keeps on being reflected so that it can actually make that connection at the stage where we have to adopt decision at the COP. So is there anyone else who wish to take the floor? I don't see. Okay, there are no takers. Okay, so maybe just a question to the floor. are you comfortable with the compilation, or at least some of the main points that we are reflecting, or do you feel that there is something that ought to come out clearer based on the posts? So I'm in your hands for anyone who wants to take the floor to give an impression or a view.
Maybe just a short mention to congratulate you. We're very happy with the summary, and I think it represents clearly what has been discussed in the forum. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Viviane.
Well, I can only support that view. Thank you very much. I think it was a very good report, and I hope that it will be useful for the future.
Thank you. Okay, I am not seeing any more requests for the floor. So, Joe, I think we might proceed.
Yes, indeed. My slides are coming up now. So. You should see them. Let me know if you don't.
It's loading. Okay, yes, I can see them now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what are the next steps from here? So preparation of the forum outcome. So like we indicated at the beginning, the Secretariat, together with myself and Janos, we will sort of be working to provide a report on the forum that will capture, of course, the background, context, and objectives of the forum that we all went through with all of the participants before the session, and also were reiterated during the session of the forum. And also it will include some of the summary of the points that were raised during the forum, those that were included in the opening webinar. So as you know, there were a lot of interventions from all of the participants at the beginning around, expressions of views of what things they think should be included, plus those that were actually posted. So all of this would be considered. And from there, the report will be prepared and posted prior to the fourth meeting of the open-ended working group. So that doesn't leave us with much time, knowing that the meeting is starting next week. And so the Subsidiary Chair will provide a brief report to the meeting plenary to draw attention of delegates to the forum. So to actually just provide a little bit of a summary as to the fact that we've had this meeting online through the discussion, and just to provide a little bit of input to raise that to all of the other delegates who did not get the chance to participate in the session. And then the report will be made available as an information document for COP15, as was previously explained. I think, yep. So, and then just to make sure that, since it was quite a small group of people from the different regions who could actually participate in the forum to post, whilst a lot of people have been able to read the post, they've not been able to contribute. So therefore, there'll be an information webinar that will provide like a full overview of the forum with all of its background, objectives, and outcomes. That we will not be opening up to debating, because we're just sort of presenting the findings or the outputs of the forum. It will be open to the public, so there will be a CBD notification that will be coming out really soon to let delegates and participants know that this will happen. For now, like Joe indicated, we're planning to hold this information webinar on Monday, 20th of June. So this coming Monday, there'll be some delegates that will still be traveling or in transit or in coordination meetings, because most of the regional meetings would be happening on Monday. So for those participants who will not be able to attend to that webinar live, they will have the chance to watch it or listen to it after, because it will be recorded and then posted on our CBD YouTube page for later reference. Okay. And then, as you know, so this was only part of the intersessional work that we wanted to address as part of the recommendations. We had 2 documents from the outset under the marine and coastal biodiversity. So we've covered what was CRP2, and that became Decision 24/9, and now, no, vice versa. So now we also have the one on EBSs, which is Decision 24/10, that we will still have to discuss. So there will be another forum that will be organized for us to address that one. And we will take a similar approach to this current forum, and it is tentatively being planned for late July. We will go through the same process of nomination and selection, and again, the outcomes of that process will be compiled and the report will be brought to the COP15, since there will not be another open-ended working session where we'll be able to do to bring it for consideration. But we know that based on the discussions from before, the points from the conservation and sustainable use document would be more important for the Nairobi discussion. So therefore, this is why the 2 forums have been spaced separately and in the kind of sequence that it has. So yeah, that's it in terms of information and on the next steps. So if there are any clarifying questions, now's the chance to take them, and I'll try and assist. And if not, then Joe and the Secretariat will be able to answer them. So opening the floor for questions. Professor Mustafa, your mic is open. Do you want to take the floor?
Yes, indeed. First of all, thank you very much, May, for this very interesting presentation, which clear all of the issues that we have already been working on for some time now. Having said that, my main concern now is the issue of EPSA. As you know, we have finished almost half of the annexes during the meeting in Geneva. So how this will be executed or implemented? Is it going to be in COP15, or is there any plan to tackle them in late July, as you suggested? It's just a matter of clarification need to be looked at. Thank you very much.
Okay. Joe, you want to take that?
Sure. Yes. Well, as Mary May highlighted, that we will be having another forum in the same format as this one. We have to pin down the exact dates and issue the notification to request nominations. We will, of course, be building on the discussions that were held in Geneva at the in-person meeting of SBSTTA. We have to think carefully about how we structure the conversation. We have many annexes. So whether we, and I think, I mean, of course, we have to discuss this with the co-facilitators, but we have to consider how best to approach those issues, whether we consolidate some of those into threads and put multiple annexes into threads and share views on those, or whether we keep the threads aligned with the annexes. Basically, that will again be an opportunity to share views on the issues that were discussed in the annex to the recommendation, building on what was already done. But again, this is an issue that has to go to COP and be discussed and negotiated at COP, and the views raised in the forum will be for information of COP. So basically, the forum will be a chance to advance the discussions, to share the views, but it still is up to the COP to formally advance those negotiations and see what we can see if we can resolve these outstanding differing views at COP. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I see a hand also from from Sophie, Belgium.
Thank you. Yes, regarding the EPSA, or my question is regarding the EPSA forum. I have to say that yesterday I was in a meeting with the EU coordination meeting regarding CBD, and to give a little bit of a fair heads up regarding what the Bureau member from the EU at least will be bringing forward is that there was a lot of concerns regarding the format. I think I expressed this at the opening session as well already, that there were concerns regarding the limitation of participation, and I intervened at that meeting, and I explained also that what the Secretariat had explained regarding geographical balance, etc. However, this didn't seem to alleviate those concerns. And in that sense, I was wondering, and I know that this is a question that will come from the EU Bureau member, if it's not possible to use for the EPSA forum, to use the same approach that apparently other online forums have used before, where it's one or even two representatives per country that are nominated to be able to participate, not only nominated, but also accepted. And in any case, I know you cannot answer this at this moment, but I wanted to share that with colleagues and with the Secretariat, that this is a question that will come, and it was of concern to a lot of my EU colleagues. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. I see Joe requesting for. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you for raising that again, and thank you also for raising and discussing internally with your colleagues. Yes, as we mentioned it earlier, and as I think as you probably also discussed with your colleagues, that the issue of regional balance was seen as important by the Bureau, and this is why this decision was made. And we do regret that this meant that we couldn't accept all of the nominations, and we've done so, and we've selected under the guidance of the Substa Bureau. But I think in particular we may also see concerns the other side if we have a large number of participants from certain parts of the world. Whereas that may dominate the views of the forum. I think this may also be, we also have to consider that many delegations, many parts of the world are in many ways one-person delegations for all of the different issues that follow under CBD, and perhaps don't have the capacities that some parts of the world do, or the human resources that some countries do to adequately participate in these deliberations. So we hope that colleagues in various parties can understand this, but we do understand the concerns and perspective both ways. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Even if I may add as well to that, there were some parties from my region, so from the African region, who actually just wanted to have the chance to maybe listen in on maybe the opening and the closing, even if they do not have the capacity to actually post. So therefore, they would be able to engage in that process. That also did come out from my region as well, just a little bit in line with the point that was raised by Sophie from Belgium. Okay, Mustafa, are you still wanting to take the floor?
Yes.
Or is that a
Yes,
legacy hand? Okay, go ahead, Mustafa. Yeah.
Maybe the best thing to do is during the Nairobi meeting. We will get the feeling of delegates in Nairobi meeting about this forum. And maybe when they see good result that came out, maybe they'll be able to appreciate it. And we tell them that we follow the rules rather than anything else. We don't want to make everybody so busy before the meeting, because certainly everyone now is either preparing for traveling, and they are already loaded with many things. So perhaps the best thing we can do is just we'll see how the delegates will feel about it in Nairobi, and then based on that we can follow up on the EPSA meeting, the forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Any more requests for the floor on questions, clarifications on next steps and the process? Okay, Sophie's hand is still up. Sophie?
Apologies, it was a legacy hand.
Okay, no worries. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I see none. So Joe, I will look to you to see, so since we've covered the program, I look to you to see what's the next step for us here.
Well, in fact, we've reached the end of the agenda. Unless others have points to raise, we've covered both the points that were raised, during the discussion, as well as the next steps and modalities. Just as I've indicated that we're reaching the end, a few hands went up, so that's, I think, perhaps we can take some remaining hands, and of course, one of those is our esteemed Substa chair. So I think it's appropriate for him to also close after we take any remaining hands. Thank you.
Okay, so Ezekiel, I'll give the floor to Mr. Steve Kirkman first, and then I'll pass on to you, if that's okay. Okay, Steve, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mary May, and congratulations on the forum. I personally enjoyed it in the format it was in. Just a remark and maybe a response to a remark made by Belgium earlier, and which perhaps is not captured in the summary slides as such, is that there were not only concerns regarding preempting of the COP decisions, although that is certainly a concern, but also concerns about singling out particular elements of the framework when the Global Biodiversity Framework has marine elements across the whole framework, and all of them are regarded as important. So I think that also just needs to be captured. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, well noted. Ezekiel, over to you, Substa chair.
Thank you very much again. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to Mary May and Janos for the excellent job in co-facilitating and leadership, moving this important topic forward. I'm happy to see the report on the 5 threads, the different points, elements. I think we fulfill the mandate where we have no mandate to negotiate. So this is very important. So what we have in the slides are elements to be taken in consideration by delegates, both in Nairobi and of course at the COP, which will be the place to continue with negotiations on the 2 documents for marine issues on conservation and EPSAs. I'm gonna make a particular comment on that later, and for the adoption of the global framework. I'd like to thank again to CBD, to Secretary Joseph and Jacqueline. I was looking at the post from Jacqueline on behalf of China and the whole team behind. I think 160 posts is a good number of contributions to fulfill recommendation 24.9. I think we together did properly. Regarding comments on EPSAs, well, the time for doing the same exercise for EPSAs is going to be later, but subject to definition, I hope by June 19 on the final dates for COP15. That can give us more clarity about the time span we have to organize it properly. The nature of the discussions on EPSAs is different from what we have now on conservation and sustainable use. Of course, I will put your concerns and comments for consultation with Substa Bureau to receive guidance, the best way to organize our work on EPSAs. I take the point of promoting broader participation on EPSAs. I would like to see later with my colleagues more detailed figures on the participations on balance, because we see 160 contributions, but many for few participants and some regions. We need to ensure broader participation and active participation. The negotiation, the elements on the table for EPSAs are quite different on the different annexes, but I think we are contributing well, and with these few suggestions, we can improve the report and the presentation that next Monday will be delivered to everybody, to take these elements while sitting the whole week in Nairobi, where appropriate, made some contributions from the perspective of marine biodiversity, coastal and marine biodiversity, for the different goals and targets as a contribution. Negotiations for the global framework still open for Nairobi, and the final time will be at the COP. We are providing elements, and also the 2 documents on marine will be negotiated again at the COP. And I think this was a good contribution. This is a good contribution for the whole process. So thank you very much to all of you, to all participants, for your contributions, and see you later, hopefully on Monday virtually, and at the next activities on EPSAs, and also at the COP. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that Janos has just joined us. I'm just going to check with my colleague if he has any parting words for us, or just general impressions before we close. Janos, over to you.
Hello, everybody, and my apologies for being late. There was another conflicting meeting, so I couldn't make it earlier. And I'm first of all, I would like to thank all contributors, and I'm really happy about the outcome of this webinar, discussion forum. I'm happy also to see that we're done with the discussions. So this must have been a very effective and efficient way of having the closing webinar. Thank you very much for that. And I look forward to seeing you and the team and everybody with the ongoing negotiations within this framework, during the intersessional work, but also, of course, at COP15 too. I think that's all I would like to say now. Thank you very much, Marie-May.
Thank you, Janos. Yeah, wrapping up in an hour. I think because it was just a matter of just presenting those points to the group. So we had a few discussions, and we will bring you up to speed after the meeting. So I guess that's thank you from us. Have a good rest of the day, and hopefully we will get the chance to see some of you in Nairobi very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Are we staying on? No, I think Joe has already